read anything from the previous meeting that we know that this meeting is a special meeting?
No.
No, yeah.
It's just a special.
This is a special meeting, to have some public comments and discuss the library expansion and renovation project and an update to that. If everyone's ready, we can move on to public comments. Okay, am I calling people up to am I calling on people? No, come up, okay.
Yes.
I mean, come up at your
All right,
major.
just the way this all happens, why do we have public comment now? We haven't heard or seen any of the presentation. Should we have a public comment after you guys give the presentation? Then we can ask questions and get some answers. It's kind of backwards, don't you think? Yeah.
There'll probably be an opportunity for you to do comments and
There
questions.
probably was, on the town meetings, there is no opportunity. You have the public comment, and then they have their meeting, and then everybody gives their presentations, and it's like.
I
Get
have a
out.
question, are you requesting that we change?
Yes,
this?
I think especially tonight, it'd be nice if we could see the plans, hear your presentation, and then we can ask questions after. Kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Instead of like, what's public, we don't even know what you guys are gonna talk about. We haven't seen the plans. So why don't we have the public comment after you guys do your presentation? Kind of makes sense, doesn't it?
I mean, that's, I don't get that, yeah. Is that what people here would like?
Yeah.
Yes,
So can I comment?
Sure.
yes,
I guess.
Typically, the public comment is held before the start of any of these public meetings, just in case someone wants to bring up, and perhaps you should have said this, is that it would be for, do you have any comments outside of items on the agenda?
Okay,
And then, so then there is, and to say that there's not comment on the items on the agenda is probably a little false. But,
well, the town select board meetings, typically they don't, after the person does a presentation.
having served on the conflict board, I did serve for 10 years on the DRB.
Okay.
And we would ask every time whether there were any comments on items not on the agenda. So I think that's actually what we're looking for here. I would defer to Eric. on that.
Yeah, it's got that.
The question came up as whether, why are we having public comment now and not after they've been able to see?
After the presentation.
Which makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
And the idea, as I was just explaining, is that typically you ask for comments for items that are not on the
right,
public meeting.
yeah, at a public meeting, it's just a standard.
Okay, so
practice.
then after you guys give the presentation, we will be able to ask questions.
Yeah, at the discretion of the chair, but I think that's the plan.
Okay, so it's one of the, because a lot of times the town meetings, after the people give their presentation. No, really, there's no conversation after that, it's like, okay, we're done, everybody leaves. So, that's great, that's what I wanna know.
Always at the discretion of the chair's.
Alright, so good then, give the presentation.
So I do have a free, do you want me to come there or stand?
whatever you're comfortable.
Yeah, I can, wherever, so the only thing I'd like to say before the meeting, I'm probably have a comment after too, but. I feel like we're being rushed. I mean, this is a holiday week. I was actually not planning to be here tonight, I was planning to be out late, but. Because this was happening, I thought I should come. Correct me if I'm wrong. There was a 3-year period of planning that we've heard, I think that's 3 years, we've heard more times. And now within the span of a couple of weeks, we're rushing to replan it, so we got it wrong after 3 years. 50% of the population basically doesn't like the plan twice, right? We voted twice on it. 50.1 one way, 50.1 the other, doesn't matter, but. Now in 2 weeks, we're gonna get the plan right. I just don't believe it, so I'll be disappointed if we try to push this forward after tonight's meeting. I don't know how many people are out of town or on vacation, but losing faith in the leadership in terms of, does this really make sense to push this fast, given where we've been for the last 2 years? So that's my confidence. Thanks.
I would just like to comment regarding that. I would not say that we got the plan wrong, because as you mentioned, half of the people in town liked the plan exactly as it was, and they voted for it. And so, this is an opportunity to adjust based on feedback that we have received so far, and, and. People who liked the plan as it was and wanted it as it was, they're not gonna get exactly what they want, that's part of compromise and, reaching out to the community as well. So maybe if you could take a listen to what the people who have made the plans as they've been done over the course of the 3 years were not made without public comment, they were made with significant public comment and public input and feedback, and with some thought as the plans were being made as to how they could be modified if need be. So nothing is set in stone, nothing was set in stone. This was the first plan that went to a vote. That's how, and now we're discussing again.
Okay.
Am I wrong about it?
No, I don't know
Why are you starting on the plan change before this second bogus survey has ended? So you don't know what people who are motivated to come.
bogus survey.
It's also extremely hard to find for most people until a few days ago, when I came into the town hall and asked Sarah, why is there no link on the town website for the survey? And within an hour, she got that on, and then I went to the library and asked the woman helping me with my book donation the same question. She went to the back, she's asking people, I'm standing there waiting because they couldn't find the link to the survey.
Yeah.
And that apparently did also get fixed, but that was only like 3 days ago. And the close of the survey is in another 3 days or something. So, yeah, and people are away and all that. So there's a rush, I agree. A rush to do a survey that's, again, convenient survey of the people who have motivated, the 1,500 who voted the first time for the library are certainly going to get their thoughts in. The rest of the population who maybe doesn't care because they don't use the library, ever consider that, aren't voting. So we have to figure out a better way, unless you just want to spend more money and take it to a vote in November and maybe have the same result. I don't think you're reaching your target population, which is everyone in Williston. So you're gonna go ahead and revise before you have data from a survey that is out there, but kind of a bogus survey of convenience. And we're taking people's time from the architectural firm to do a presentation without, I mean, we have 2 professionals here waiting to give a presentation, but we don't have any additional information than we had a week ago.
We do, so maybe we should get started with the presentation.
Well, I'd like to know where that information is from, because we didn't have to put it to it.
Well, why do you think you should know everything? You should like be ready to listen. Oh, sorry.
Obviously, I'm here and ready to listen and not having my dinner. So yes, but you asked for public comment, and I shouldn't be, my public comment should not be argued against as soon as I say it.
Yeah, I agree with that too. That's very
That's so rude and
untypical.
yeah. You should listen the same way we're gonna listen.
Very hires.
Okay. Again,
Just quickly, my name is Ken Morton, I'm a Wilson resident, and I had sent a letter to Kevin yesterday from both my wife and I. Was that circulated?
It hasn't been circulated yet,
Okay,
not to the board that's here.
okay. I encourage you to please do that, because it was really addressed to yourself, the board, as well as the select board and you, Eric. Because someone in here already, I addressed in a letter, and it doesn't really speak to the fact that I might be against the library project. I had concerns about what first for the voters. And having been a department head in this town for 28 years, I saw votes year after year that were usually in the 70-30 range in favor of the town budget and what was proposed for the town. So when you see a 50-50, it speaks volumes to the fact that it's a pretty contentious vote. And I think we need to spend quality time making sure that everyone in town fully understands where this is headed. and is communicated well, and I think it speaks to the fact that we can talk tonight, but I believe that, a meeting before a survey is interesting, first of all, and secondly, let's just not rush into another vote. And that's actually best in this letter. So hopefully Pam will get it out to you guys, and I have about 8 copies of both, and it was interesting tonight, thank you, that's it. Thank you.
If there are no more public comments outside of people who might want to comment after, can we hear the update?
Yeah, I can read the work of the schematic design committee.
Thanks, Kevin.
Sure. This is a letter the Schematic Design Committee put together regarding proposal for revisions to the Dorothy Allen Memorial Library expansion project. Sure. Okay. The Dorothy Allen Memorial Library Schematic Design Advisory Committee, the SDAC, was called up again in June 2026 to re-examine the original project plans it helped develop throughout 2024. In light of recent votes that initially moved the project forward by a very narrow margin, then reconsidered that vote by an equally narrow margin, the SDAC was charged by trustees with developing revised plans that would provide a more affordable project while keeping a set of elements of the original plan. Gathering feedback. In order to revise plans in as responsive a manner as possible, the SDAC looked at feedback first from the 2023 scoping and feasibility study. The original plan included input from almost 1,000 residents. It favored an addition in the current location, since this was both what most residents desired and the less expensive option versus building new elsewhere. The committee then reviewed and discussed feedback received for the 9 months from when the bond was put on the ballot by the Selectboard, including Front Porch Forum and Next Door, the editorial pages of the Williston Observer, at public meetings where the bonds were discussed, via email to the library director and board of trustees, and from talking with their neighbors, colleagues, and friends. Finally, the SDAC reviewed the listening session conducted on June 15th and has begun review of preliminary results of the project priorities survey currently underway, which will close July 4th. And if I could add a parentheses to address your concern, because I think it's a valid one, regarding participation in the survey, Lauren. We did ask a couple demographic questions in that survey. One relates to age, the other relates to how often you use the library. So those were 2 of the questions that were on the survey. And those questions were asked in order to be able to weight the survey results, so that we tried to have a representative population of Williston residents to review, rather than just people who decided to take the survey. As an example, 50% of Williston residents are library card holders and 50% aren't. So the plan for those results is to weight the survey in such a way that 50% of respondents to the survey who respond rarely or never as using will have their voice equal 50% in the survey. The same is true of the demographics. So the question in terms of age will be used also to weight the survey to make sure that there's a representative population of Williston respondents by age. So there is a plan built in, and that's why those questions were asked, because we understood that folks who had a dog in the fight, so to speak, would be the ones answering that survey. So I hope that helps at least ameliorate that concern, which I think is a very valid one. So
Yes.
Let's keep going. Our next section, feedback from those opposed to original project. After reviewing all the feedback above, the SDAC found several themes emerging related to the original project scope from residents who opposed the project, and included our actual quotes from the feedback received. 1, cost. Far and away the biggest objection, the project was seen as too expensive. Quote,
We love the library and use it quite often. While we support maintaining and even enhancing the library, the costs are just plain challenging for our family and many others. Quote, get our property taxes under control before finding ways to spend more of the taxpayer dollars. This is unsustainable. Second feedback item, impact on the village green. Too much of the green would be lost to the addition and parking. Quote, please don't touch the village green. Don't touch us in all times. Perfect for town band concerts and love the trees. Third area, building appearance and location. The two-story addition clashed with the current style and should be located in Taft's Corners. Quote, the area is one, too small for a large meeting facility. Two, located in the historic district. Move those functions to Taft Corners where the bulk of population is now living. Area 4. Building too large, too big. The addition was planned to last 50 years into the future, but no one knows what Williston will be like then. Quote, I love the library and understand the need for the upgrade. The upgrade needs to be reasonable in scope and affordable for citizens. Number 5, too many meeting spaces. Meeting space could be supplemented by spaces elsewhere in town. Quote, has there been a facilities audit of other Williston buildings to avoid duplication? Meeting rooms. Number 6, unnecessary details. The fireplace, meeting room, kitchenette, and makerspace were all called out for being wants rather than needs. Quote, the kitchen and makerspace are innovative, but should be funded separately from core library needs. So those represent the major areas of feedback that the committee looked at and is reporting on in terms of those who are opposed to the project. Now feedback from those in favor of the original project. The SCAC also recognized that half of voters approved of the project in its original scope and cost, both in the original vote in March and the reconsideration vote in May. Several themes emerged from their feedback regarding areas of specific interest. Number 1, library is a critical community asset. Supporters frequently describe the library as essential for education, literacy, lifelong learning, and maintaining a strong family-friendly community. Quote, I support a library improvement. We are living in perilous times and need access to education. First and foremost is that we provide exceptional resources for our children. A library is an investment for building healthy and successful families and communities. Second area, more space for books. Many supporters emphasize expanding book collections, reducing wait times, creating additional shelving space, and providing comfortable areas for reading and study. Quote, space for more books, please. It's a great library, but the town is growing. Plus, library needs to be bigger. Plus, have more books. Area 3, expanded programming space. Supporters repeatedly mentioned the need for additional meeting rooms and flexible spaces to accommodate book clubs, classes, tutoring, civic organizations, community gatherings, and public programs that are currently constrained by space. The meeting spaces should be accessible after hours, similar to how it is today. We really need the meeting spaces free of charge that community groups do not have to pay for. Area 4, children's and family spaces. Parents highlighted story times, children's programming, family gathering areas, and dedicated spaces that support early literacy, young families, and creative learning opportunities. Quote, I love our library and wanted to expand so that it can have more books and a cool maker space and more space for kids and kids activities. Area 5, improved accessibility and parking. Supporters cited the need for better ADA access, additional handicap parking, safer traffic flow, more parking capacity, and a building that better serves patrons and staff. I would use the library more with better physical accessibility, flat entrance, more handicap parking. And so those were the summary that the SDAC developed over the 2 meetings that it conducted in June. Were the various elements of feedback that have been gathered and taken into account up to this point. And now I'm going to turn over to what you've come for, which is the path forward that is being recommended by the Schematic Design Advisory Committee. And I will bring up a site plan, first of all, and I'll invite our architects to come up as well, should you have. Should the board have questions of them, but let me share, if I can, the site plan. That is the revised site plan that the Schematic Design Advisory Committee is proposing to the trustees.
Can I say something?
Sure.
So, one of the things with the schematic design committee, many of. So one of the things that we decided fairly early, okay, first I want to say one thing. We aren't starting from scratch here. So in terms of the timing, we are building on what we already have. And we are also using all of the historical things that Kevin mentioned that we've been listening to during this, time from before town meeting and all of the information sessions that we've been having up until this time. So when the schematic design committee met, one of the things that we realized as a committee was a one-story, if it was possible, because we are architects. That's why we have our architecture firm here. If it was possible that we could get the things that we wanted in this, it needed for the library in a one-story addition. And so that was something that we were able to kind of start with. And so with that in mind, there were some things that we also kind of tweaked out. And you can see that there were a number of things here with the one story, and the parking lot is much less, and actually that's all the cat. We pretty much decided that the green was not going to be part of this bond. That could be something that we were going to be including. And that parking was still going to be something that we were considering, and that has also gone through a couple of iterations as we're looking at this. I don't know, do you guys want to say anything about that? Yeah.
We should have the architects do.
Yes,
the presentation.
yes, so that's right.
Yeah, Brian, I go over there, just to be easier for me to talk about it, so. So based on the feedback that the committee has received, is this doing anything? No, it's not. We have set about to reduce the scope of the project. So you can see here, the addition is still in the same spot it was in the previous iteration. It is now one story, it's not a two-story. It is also set to the existing floor elevation of the existing building. So that eliminates the stairs and the elevator that were in the building to get from a lower elevation up to the existing floor elevation. We have also reduced the size of the parking lot. Previous version of the parking lot was out here, there are more parking spaces, so we pulled that back. And we have also eliminated the scope of work on the green, which were new paths. There was a performance area for band. That's all been done away with. I think primarily the biggest difference aside from being one story is the entrance in this option is now on the east end of the building. And that is because as we pull the building up, the grade between the parking lot and the floor elevation was such that trying to get in the building from the parking lot, the grade difference was too great. And so we moved the entrance to the east end of the building and no longer on the north side. The existing building, the scope of work in there, we're still going to be renovating. I think we've had some preliminary discussions about how we can minimize the renovations in there and provide more space for books and collections. And part of that was responding to the space that they were getting feedback on that were not necessarily desired or felt necessary. So that's in a nutshell where we are now. I can happy to answer any other questions. The plan itself, I will say, it's a work in progress. It's, to the comments I heard about the survey and the plan now, this is a work in progress, nobody thinks this is done or final yet, we're trying to mold a program for the building, if you will, based on feedback they've received so far, and from the previous,
Mark, could you tell them the difference in size?
yes, so the original or previous iteration, the square footage of the addition was 11,500, somewhere in there, 11,500 square feet. This footprint, one story, is just under 6,800 square feet. So it's, the square footage has been reduced by taking the second level off. The first story footprint has grown a little bit, to accommodate what the tentative program of the building might be, and that's, as I said, is still being developed.
Do you want me to bring up that tentative program?
Yes,
So, one of the reasons the two-story, option was to choose originally was because it created a site that it slopes down. And a two-story addition allowed access at a lower grade and then with stairs and elevator access to the building. When we brought into a one-story addition that was at the main level, gaining accessible entrances for that, for the main level is the main challenge while trying to create more accessible parking and, site access. So that really drove the entrance, moving the entrance to the east side here was something that allowed, you can see that parking at the road level and access quite easily into the building with also ramp access. So there'd be two accessible, entrances and exits to that space. So that's a big driving factor in the site choice. So we're trying to figure out how it's possible to make an addition in as little financial cost as possible in that current site. So that's most of what's involved in the site.
So the current parking disappears.
The current, so the,
it's still there.
it's still there, and when you first enter library lane, there's this 15-minute parking, they're kind of protruding. Those in this plan are pushed in line with the other, having more space there.
Adding that from here to the entrance.
You go along here, go along the sidewalk, much as you do now, and then in the east end of the building.
The entrance.
Yeah.
How many parking spaces are on Library Lane?
I believe right now there are 14
In this drawing?
well, well,
And I'm sorry, I can't see, how many in the parking areas created behind?
11.
The 20 rentals.
13.
Well,
23.
Does this addition have a basement?
We are pricing out a separate option for a basement under the west end. We do need to find some mechanical space for the building, as we no longer have the second story. Mechanical rooms need to go somewhere. There has also been some potentially basement that could also accommodate van storage. But we are pricing that piece out separately, so we know what the cost of that is. As we go through this process and work to come up with a new number, we're trying to build into the program and the budget, things that we can break out the cost of, so we know what they're worth. So depending on where we need to get to, we can pull pieces out here.
So typically, when I do projects, I would start with the dollar value first, and how much I'm looking to spend, and then I build into that project. Like, so much I can put into it for how much money I'm in. Have you guys figured out, what is your actual target for, how much is this gonna cost? I mean, that's where it all starts from. You don't say, well, we're gonna plan it. Are we looking at $4 million project? Are we looking at a $2 million project? He's already owned the land, the water, sewer, electricity is already there. So how much money are we looking at for this project right now, the way it is? It doesn't be exact, just kind of like rough.
I wanna ask a question, are you speaking specifically to the expansion or the entire project, including current renovation?
Well, it sounds like current renovations might be dumbing down a little bit, right?
No.
That was a big part of it, it was a lot of money. Yeah, the renovation is almost cheaper to rip it down and start all over, in some cases.
That's not true. But, so it's interesting that you would do a project where you would start with the money and then work it backwards, which that's not really the way we've been doing that, and it's not the way I would recommend that you do that. So what we've done as a committee is to try to figure out how we can reduce the scope and still provide the services that the town has said, and the supporters have said they need in this building. And at the same time, I think this, as Kevin described earlier, we're trying to listen to what pieces are the least necessary or the most expendable. And trying to reduce the scope of that project as much as we can. We'll find out what that costs, and we may have to reduce it further if we feel that that's not a palatable number.
Right, but I think this was.
So we have to remember that 50% plus or minus of the voters felt that the price and the scope we had before was perfectly.
If 50%.
So when you think about a compromise between where we were and where we're looking for, that's something that this committee can, not really, it's really the trustees. And ultimately the select board are gonna have to make that determination.
Right, but typically, like, whenever I do projects for anybody, they would say, this is how much I want to spend, and then I give them
I'm
options.
not sure what your business is, that would, you would be doing it that way, but that's not the way.
Well, that's.
Public buildings, that's not the way that public buildings and construction works.
Right, so that's what.
So I'm really glad that that's the way you do it, and that's fine.
Okay.
But that's not the way it's been done here, and it's not the way that I think any architect or would recommend it.
Right, the way it's been recommended, sort of the same situation. People only want to spend so much money for the project.
That's true.
If we start with, let's see, this is our low end and our high end, what can we do within this? You'll have better success with it passing. Yeah.
Thank you.
I just wanna say, we have listened carefully to the people who are opposed to this project. I think Kevin has quoted what we have read, we have paid close attention to that, but we have equally paid attention to what the other half of the community wants.
But
It-
it isn't half and half.
No.
It's 1,500 people and 1,500 people roughly. I think there were about 3,000 people who voted. We have 8,000 or more voters in Williston.
We're not assuming, I'm just assuming that if everybody voted, that it would probably be the same.
No, I don't think so.
Well,
I don't think so.
No,
It's
you don't.
very possible that it would have voted and passed by a lot more. but-
Yes.
Right, and it's possible to go the other way.
Exactly.
You
So
don't
we
have the
really are-
numbers, you don't have the numbers to say.
But we
either way,
don't
so
have
it's
that
not-
because they didn't vote.
Okay, before we go on, I'm gonna ask that people not talk over one another, but I also wanna ask if it would be helpful. Personally, I think it would be helpful if we could break down the difference between renovation and what that actually means and the cost of that and why it's necessary and expansion and what that means. Would it be helpful to have that understanding? Yes. I'm gonna ask Kevin, can you speak to that, or can you speak to the difference and the actual cost breakdown and what we. Just to fix where we're at and bring things up to current state standards and to make the building. As it is. Function the way it should. What that would be, so that we can see, that's. I think the floor. Of what would be spent, and that this would not involve. A single new book. Because there would be no new space. I just wanna be clear on that, and if I'm wrong about anything, I welcome anyone who has more information to correct me. But I think it would be really helpful to start with some basic facts about what we're considering and what the costs are and why they're so, why what that need is that we're trying to meet.
I didn't hear it. Okay, well, he's standing in our team. I'm sorry, what is your name?
Mark,
Can I just ask him a question before?
Sure, go ahead.
So I went to a Saturday library meeting with Kevin there, and Kevin and I, we had this tall gentleman who I think was the architect. And he made a great suggestion, which I hadn't thought, but I want to bring it up. He said if there was ever, for some reason, this is where you're going to sit outside, right? If something needed to be done, how would you bring equipment in here, or could you leave section open? So you can get out in case you ever needed, or whether it's this way or that way, to get in here to fix something or have an inside wall or anything like that. So I just bring that, because that older gentleman had mentioned that at a Saturday meeting.
we will have to make provisions either through the existing building or the addition to get any type of equipment in there. I think that the plan is that you're not gonna need major equipment in that space. There's currently, I don't believe, the need for a lot more in there, but
He had brought up.
no, it's a completely valid point.
So just because of the chase on cost, was there a cost of renovation of the original building? And has that changed with the current reiteration that you're considering? Has the scope of work for renovation of the current building changed and reduced? Or do we know?
We are still, you know,
So we don't know.
process.
So can I ask you just, how did the scope come about in the first place? So I've seen these surveys and I've read the initial report, big report. And then I read the second survey, which had many of the same things in there, it prioritized these things. But how did that list of things come about in the first place? Because I keep on hearing things like 50% want this, but did they come to the library trustees and said, hey, we really need this? I'll use an example, a wiggle room, or we really need, a major room, or did the library trustees or the director go out and get a consultant? And they told them, this is what you need to make a modern library. Ask your residents to prioritize these things. How did that scope come about in the first place? Because we keep on going back to, well, to do our scope, we have to spend a certain amount of money, we have to do, so much. So how did the scope come about? How did that list of things that you've added to the library come about? Because most of them seem like community center things. But
Well, one of the things, the scoping study did ask for what people wanted. And so some things like the legal room came up during conversations there. And partly because South Burlington has a legal room. And a lot of people go to South Burlington and they see it and they're like, okay, we're gonna be doing this. So a legal room, which is an early literacy room for people. But there were a lot of the things that came in, and then plus a lot of the things that came in for the scoping study. But the priority list for the survey came from the conversations that we had, a number of conversations, and listening to all the people in the sessions. And then also what a modern library could be. We had a library consultant, Mara Saul, who has she's done a lot of work with libraries. She worked very carefully with Jane and the other staff. Jane was the previous director, and came up with ideas of things that they would like to have in this library to move it forward. And so many of those were put into the original plan.
As
Now-
well as the non-space that was.
Yes, in the square footage that was needed. So that was what we were looking at from a profession, a library consultant who was paid for her work. And then, the architects kind of responded, and the strategic design committee responded to, looking back and forth at those kinds of things. Now, in terms of listening more, what we put on the priority list were the things that people had mentioned, like Kevin said, we had heard, we don't want to have a kitchenette. Okay, so let's see if we can get an idea about what people think about that. Or we do want this. So it was the study, the survey, it is a convenient survey. I would call it a bogus survey. In fact, I would not call it a bogus survey at all. But it can be something that we can use to help inform things that we've heard, that we've talked to people about, that have mentioned. and that we've read about on Front Page Forum, that we've read about in the letters to the editor. So what this is doing is it's helping us clarify our priorities, because what we have to do now is we have to cut some things. We have to cut some things in order to get the price down, but we also want to keep some things too. So what's the compromise? What are the things that we're going to keep and what are the things that we're going to cut? The survey is part of that, not all of it, because, you know, we've got our own, you know, listening sessions and things that we had, and being there for town meeting and the listening session that we had on the 18th, and what a modern library is. So that's informing that priority list, and that's informing the survey. It's a very simple survey because, you know, it's just a simple survey, but it is not both.
I did say I was focused.
No, I know you did it, but I want to put that out there too.
In regards to the, like, the wiggle room, I think what Carla said was really helpful in identifying that's for, you know, early development, younger children. One of the things that I've heard from youth in the community is they want separate spaces for the older kids and the younger kids, just like adults have a separate space. And so it might look like it's, you know, a space that only certain people use, but that's also how libraries tend to be set up. There are spaces so that every member of the community has a space available to them, because it's not a community center, but a library by nature is a community center. It is a space in the community that I would hope would have a place for everyone, because even if everyone doesn't use it, everyone is welcome to at any time. And so if we, as the Board of Trustees, wanted it to be welcoming to every member of the community, for everyone to feel like they could potentially have a place there.
There was one data point that I'm not sure we covered that was on the survey though, and which was, we were asked to estimate what costs we would like to spend on it. And going back to the spend question, was there results on that you got from the demographics that you were talking about? We heard comments, what about the spend that people were willing?
Do you want me to address that, Chair?
Sure.
Okay.
And if you wanted to talk a little bit about the difference.
And another point that I keep hearing tossed out term was modern library, so I'd like to know what that definition is as well.
That's just
I have a comment on the process of the talking about the collection space and the process of how we got to the current scope. And so there was a library consultant, there was the outreach process, and a lot of research with other libraries in the state. And I'm not gonna remember the exact numbers, but Williston is a huge population and has one of the smaller library footprints for its population size. And so a big part of the process was understanding the current linear footage of books in the library and projecting this is like how much bookshelf space could we have to accommodate our population of Williston. And so that's where the square footage of the collection areas that the library is looking for, specifically of adult collection, youth collection, young adult collection. So those square footage areas that were in the original plan came from specifically measurement of shelf length and requirement for that. So when we get to looking at the plan, you'll see the specific collection space that came from measurements of books and looking at other libraries and how would we serve the population. No.
I like that.
So Kevin, you were gonna address those other questions?
Yeah.
So there's a question about what is the modern library that was sent to, and one was the cost question. So I could address the cost question. In terms of the results as they currently have been received, if you would like. Okay.
Yeah.
So far there have been, as of noon today, 472 respondents to the survey. I will point out those quotes that I read are not all from the survey. Some of those were from Front Porch Forum, some of those were from the listening session. So they weren't surveyed. The question you're referring to has a range from less than 8 million to more than 12 million. So there's the option for either of those, and in between. The mean comfortable cost weighted to demographics is 9.86 million. The mean unweighted comfortable cost is 10.1 million, so the weighting is. The median comfortable cost is 10 million unweighted, and weighted is 9.5 million. So far in the survey results, and that's 472 respondents.
So one of the answers was less than 8 million, correct? How do you understand what that means? Like you said, the mean, the median, 9 million and 10 million. Like, I would think 5 million would be under, or 4 million would be under. So how do you
To
know?
get that result, I pegged it at what the renovation cost only was that was identified in the first survey, and this project cost, which was $3 million. So that for what
For
the
the renovation.
For the renovation alone, that's what it was pegged at in the first cost estimate. Now, I didn't want to give you that figure because we're getting an updated cost estimate. And, you know, with inflation and whatnot, but that's what that was pegged at, and then. Within 12 million was pegged at the original bond amount of 13.9 million. Now, those people could have wanted a $20 million library, and the people who said less could have wanted 0, but I felt like those were reasonable numbers that passed the smell test.
Three.
I used 3.
Somebody was less than 8.
Yes, and for more than 12, I used 13.9. Now, in terms of what a modern library is. Do you want my opinion?
Definition, we keep calling it out, so is there a definition?
I can give you
modern
mine.
libraries.
I don't wanna,
So it includes like makerspace, and these are all things that are modern libraries.
so modern library is more than a place to borrow books. It's an essential public institution that educates, connects, preserves, serves residents of every age and background. Books remain at the heart of its mission, but its true value lies in many ways it enriches community life. At its core, a library is an institution of learning. It offers early literacy programs, summer reading, technology assistance, lifelong learning opportunities, access to thousands of print and digital resources. It supports educational success at every stage of life. As we continue to evolve, the library remains a place where everyone in our modern life, regardless of age, background, or income, can learn and grow. We're also an important community gathering space. So unlike commercial spaces, the library welcomes everyone without requiring a purchase or a membership. Families attend story times, neighbors meet in the community room, students study and gather after school, and local organizations gather to collaborate. In an increasingly busy world, the library offers a welcoming place where people can connect with one another and participate in the civic life of town. I think just as importantly, the library is a keeper of Williston's history. Through its long partnership with the Historical Society, the library helps preserve and share the stories, photographs, documents, and artifacts that tell the story of the town's roots and its transformation over time. The library and Historical Society work together to make sure that the community remains connected to the people and events that shaped it. The library also exemplifies the value of shared public resources. A community is choosing to share rather than duplicate resources when they borrow a book, use a meeting room, come and use a computer, do a digital download. And that extends beyond our collections to our space, our public technology, and our services. So, in a nutshell, a library isn't just a collection of books anymore. It serves those other purposes as well. And I believe, as our chair said, that a recreation center has elements of a community center in it. And I believe a library also has elements of a community center. And so that's what I would call a honor.
Yeah, I think that's a great definition, but I also think that the current library serves for a good number of things there, and that like there's things that currently We offer computer services, we have places for kids that learn, and there's some people, there are meeting rooms. So I would say, I'm not sure, the current space is not a modern library. What you're trying to build is a bigger library that offers more of the things that you have. So there's a Venn diagram of what you have, and you're trying to make that Venn diagram inclusive of all the things you want.
That's fair.
And I would say that we need, as our town population has grown significantly since the last expansion. So to meet the needs of the community as we've grown. Yes, Emma.
I think it would be very helpful for you guys moving forward to be really specifically call out the renovation and its amount of money and the expansion. You touched on that a little bit ago. Maybe two separate bonds. I'm fairly well read, and I completely missed that $3+ million was for renovation of the existing space.
And can we speak to a little bit about what that is? What is there are components that are related to, like the HVAC system. This is not sure. And it's not, the renovation isn't actually changing the space very much. It's the HVAC system, it's stormwater remediation.
For sure.
And I'm gonna ask that Kevin can speak to that specifically about some of the challenges currently faced by the library.
Sure. So as you said, the HVAC system is not up to date. It also runs outside of the building envelope, which isn't, up to the current standards. The building isn't sprinklered. The insulation and all parts of the building, and I think maybe John worked on the project originally could address this as well, isn't up to current standards as well. You wouldn't build a building that way now. And so all of those things are major components, and then just the wear and tear on the building over several decades in order to bring it up to sort of make it look like it would fit in with an addition in that sense. So there isn't anything, I think, in that number that is a significant change to the current layout. But that's just to bring the building up to current standards.
But that cost, correct, that $3 million cost was also predicated on it happening at the same time as an expansion. So it could be more to just do it standalone.
Yeah.
But it would increase the cost if we phase the project. So just keeping that in mind, and we don't know what that exact number is, but in the original plan, $3 million was the renovation of the existing structure, but it was hand to hand with all that.
It also then allows for keeping the library open the entire time, because if it had to close, because that's significant of a renovation, you have to close the library, and then you would either have no library, or there would be a cost to finding replacement place or temporary space in that.
Did anyone else over here connect? Okay, go ahead.
So I sent an email to the town manager, the select board, the library, director of the library, about the actual survey that you guys sent out, that I think you should have other options, like saying, no, you don't want to do it at all. Or having the dollar value, instead of saying 8 million or less, say, start at 500,000, work your way up to that value. So that way you're actually collecting more data to say, okay, out of all the people that did the survey, that the largest percentage say this is what we're willing to spend on. So that's my first question. The second question is, actually three of them. The other one is, when you talk about you have 400 people that have submitted the surveys, are those the online surveys or those paper fill out ones that were handed out the Wilson Central School and the auditorium when you guys had, when we had that open house? Because the paper ones aren't valid, because there's no names or nothing, people could have voted 3 or 4 times, you have no idea. So those really. Their names on those, and you're validating, make sure they're not doing.
Kevin, Are you validating things?
It's not an actual vote, so it's not gonna be validated as like a ballot would be when you're voting. But
So we require first name, last name, street address. I don't know if I have a copy of the survey here, but we indicated that that was in order to be able to validate it, and it would be used, the results would be presented in aggregate, so people weren't worried about providing that information. And that was the same as what is online exactly. And so we have also been making sure that folks weren't submitting more than one survey in order to tip the scales. So I don't know a way without actually having a vote of the town clerk to better validate a survey. I'm not sure what that would be. But if you know, and you had a question?
But another question was, as far as now you say the survey goes into what, the 4th of July, something like that? Are we gonna go to a date, or are we gonna go to a certain percentage of the population that we see that have actually taken the survey? So 400 people out of less than 10,000 population for Williston isn't really I'd say a really good image of what we're actually people looking to see.
We have given people numerous opportunities besides the survey, and we've listened to them. Much of what we're getting is a repeat. There are people in town who are gonna say no to the library if it costs 5 cents. But that's why we try to say, you know, there are people who are gonna vote for it. Just like some people vote for the school budget without looking, but we're trying to seriously figure out where we can cut. And still provide what the town is asking us to provide, but
Yeah, that's why it'd save a lot of time if we. What I talked about earlier about having a planned budget with dollar amount that we're shooting for, so that we don't waste a lot of time. I'd like to see the libraries have a successful renovation. But I don't want to see anybody waste their time. As well as if we know we start out with, we got a $5 million budget. And we're gonna build in that 5 million, it's gonna have a good success of passing, I would assume. Sorry.
Did you have a number that you meant to make when you built the fire station? Was there a number that you started with and then designed around that, or?
There was, of course, the dollars are very different from 20 years ago.
But you started with a dollar figure and then you built the fire station around?
Well, what happened was, we originally were gonna build a firehouse, and then take the old firehouse down and build a police station. But there wasn't enough money. So I came up with the concept of let's build both at the same time, and we just parted all the fire trucks out around town and lived out of the workers wood building for a year. So we saved $900,000 doing that, which is why I think the speaking of doing the renovation and the ability at the same time makes sense. That's what we lived. As far as the dollar amount, it's been 20 years. I remember asking for and trying to spend, if I remember correctly, $9 million. And it came in at 7, and it was woefully under budget when we went back to the voters to come up with. So we built the 2 police buildings,
Similar sort of process.
We have to move on. I have quick closing 2 thoughts. I really encourage this group to include whatever it takes to renovate the existing building, because it's needed. So please do that. And as far as the rest, Kevin has the letter that Ginger wrote and the letter that I wrote. He'll circulate that. It speaks for itself. I know one thing I heard a lot about during the whole process before the original vote and revote was the amount of not the walking paths and bandstand, things like that, but the amount of land of the town green was lost through this project. And I just had a thought that I shared with Kevin. I'll throw it out. If there's any possibility of taking that footprint and turning it against Library Lane, right now, what I'm looking at is 3/4 of what was previously proposed. So there's not a lot of gain back of the town space in this proposal, but if you turn the building, you might get half of the town green space left as it currently is. Just a thought, but I trust you guys will do the right thing. Thank you.
Kevin, you made a calculation of how much we're saving on the green with this plan, didn't you?
Yeah, so I did. We've eliminated the parking that was over here. The parking that was coming out to here. And then the bandstand space that was here and the sidewalks. So the net impact on the town green is under 15% of the current town green, and I believe I saw the figure on Front Porch Forum of 30%. So this is under 15% impact on the town green if you look at the actual square footage of the building and the parking lot. And it's not no impact. Certainly, but the goal again is to try to find a compromise solution that people get some of what they want on both sides. So that's what we're.
If you can speak to the comment on the portion of the green. So I mean, this part is in the report that was done a couple of years ago. At the time, John Hildebrand was working on it, they looked at 7 different options to add on to the library in the current location. So there was like a reverse horseshoe, there was like another L, there was one portion going along library lane. And so a lot of options were looked at because it was really important from what people heard to keep the library different. And so this concept of enclosing the current horseshoe came about from talking with library staff in terms of how can we add this minimum square footage that was gotten to in combination of collection areas and library requirements, and have that be a space that's supportable by staff who work there. And so this, where it connects on both sides, is something that the library staff expressed as something they could keep a good eye on what's happening. Versus some portions of the library feeling like they're really far and a long walk from other places. So there's certainly what to consider there. Is the horseshoe, I mean, the space that's outside of the horseshoe now, currently, is that being used, going to become a room? That will stay, but why? What, that's completely wasted space. Have you ever seen anybody sitting there?
Yes,
That's nice.
that's very fun.
And you can't walk on it now.
It's that's true. That.
It has been that way for a while up here, I know. I think that we can,
Sorry.
I'm just making a suggestion. You would hear me.
There's an online.
The suggestion is take it as room for more vote. And the room now that is, and when you walk in the library, currently, turn immediately to the left. It was where, when I moved in here, the children's space was. There's nobody ever in there. It's got these crazy kind of cubicle desk things, and again, never seen anybody using that space. Is that where you train people on?
It's a computer room, it's the adult computer room and it is used.
Kevin, can you speak to how that space is?
Anyway, I mean, I really seriously think that the architecture, in the building, could look at
We
So-
said this building, I think.
and spend hours. looking
I think
at
The
how-
biggest issue with it was putting a building or a roof over that area, you wind up with that much more space inside the building, has no access to daylights. So this option, we get another side of the fronting courtyard that has daylight with access to it, and we have daylight on all other 3 sides of the building. So that's the huge part of what we do is making sure there's daylight for all the uses of the building.
There's, go to a lot of libraries, and there are spaces with no windows and light.
And there's going to be those in this building too. That's.
Yeah.
No,
Where you have-
understand, but I think that's an expensive project right there. We've done courtyard infills before. That's a wildly expensive project, and you wind up with a lot of space, no daylight access to them, but skylights in the roof, which people predominantly don't like skylights because they think they leak, so I think the concept we've come up with. Understand not everybody likes it, but I think it's responsible and it addresses as many of the things like access to daylight. And still providing staff spaces which are, to your point, not gonna have as much daylight.
I understand we have a comment.
It's better.
I understand you have a comment online, and then after that, I'd like to move forward so we can hear the rest of the presentation. before we take additional minutes. Did you say there was a comment online, Kevin?
Yeah, go ahead, Reed.
Thanks, Kevin, and Chair. Hey, yeah, Reed Carr here. I just wanted to comment that I think it's important to remember that while the collection process will never be perfect to get all the input from everybody, it's important not to use anecdotal information about, I've never seen somebody use something. For instance, I had never seen anybody use the courtyard before either. And then last Thursday, I found myself hosting a potluck dinner out there. So it's important to have the staff, the survey information, the listening sessions, and basically allow the design committee to coalesce all that information to find out what's actually being used, either through data or through reports of what's important to people. So I just want to make that comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Reed. Is there additional information that we might present about the project? Last comment before we move on.
It's a question.
Go ahead.
I would like one of the architects above to run us through how it has been operating, where the main entrance is, circulation, pedestrian circulation, cars. I see great changes. It looks like it's a stormwater pond up there. And I couldn't see any of the cursors to point out how this works. I think that it would be helpful to know, okay, if we're gonna shrink the budget, what are we losing in terms of functions? What are we gonna end up with if it is shrunk?
Is this part of the next part of the presentation? Okay, let's move on.
So we have for estimating only idea of what the building might look like inside. And again, I think it needs to be made clear that the cost estimate we're looking at is for the shell as described, the entrance, and then interior functions that we're still working on gathering community input to refine. So part of the reason the survey is closing to get the maximum number of results is that we do need to know principally what we're going to have inside of the building to do a cost estimate, but we don't need to know the details of absolutely everything. So there's the opportunity to adjust what's inside the building, but this schematic design gives you an idea of what it might look like with the entrance to the east. And I can try to make it bigger. That would be helpful for folks.
Do you want me to follow along with my finger where you're pointing? Can I do, is that okay, Kevin? So this is the new entrance, correct? Okay.
So this is the new entrance. This would be library, large meeting room,
Large being how large?
802 square feet.
So 8 by 10. No.
802,
Yeah,
so I don't know what that works out to, but about 40.
Works out to about the size of
Yeah.
that class.
Okay, 30-ish. Okay. So there's a secondary egress exit that goes here, and then there are two restrooms. The adult space is this space. This is currently the adult space. The adult space would be over here. This is the adult space that's currently there. We repurposed as the staff area with this round as the circulation desk. The room that commenter was referring to as was the computer room that we repurposed here as one medium-sized meeting room. The historical society would remain the same as it currently is, basement as well. All of this space is young adult and youth collections. So this area that's here. And then this room also would remain the same. It was, if you remember, shortened. And there's additional space here, but as a cost savings, we would just leave this room as it is.
And this is the current meeting room.
And this was the current meeting room. So this would be, it would be a children's pre-literacy play area. And also where story time and children's programming would happen. Since best practice does dictate that you have a children's meeting area. And That, so it would remain as it currently is. This space will also remain as it currently is. Does that give you a sense of the sort of idea of how the circulation would happen?
Is west at the top of the page?
North is at the top of the page. Library Lane is over here. This is like current library lane, right here.
West.
And this is the current entrance, right?
This is the current entrance. Maybe if we go
Oh,
back.
yeah,
to
this is the adult section.
Here's Library Lane. Here's the addition, and then if we go here, this is Library Lane. This is the addition. And you will see actually that a portion of the courtyard is infilled. Just there and there. So there is a small portion that has been infilled, which is what is some of the additional square footage.
One of the things that might be helpful as you do this is to show the current square feet for the, whatever it is that's on the list, you know, adult bunks, children's space, and then the new space. That would be really helpful.
Yeah.
Feeling for how we changed.
Yeah. And we are looking at those numbers, they are dependent on, again, that feedback. This was the best way to add space at the lowest possible cost. Another thing the architects didn't mention, but I believe is true, is this can be a wood building rather than a steel building. And there may be savings with that as well. And it also could be white clapboard ground entirely, so it would fit in more. But not going up 2 stories, you have potential building it as a stick-built building. Which does provide some cost savings.
The assumption here is that this is gonna be an entirely wood frame building, wood exterior walls, wood roof trusses. And the masonry has been stripped out.
Is the original building wood?
Yes, so it would fit in a lot more character wise, is the original building except for the original.
Right.
Which is correct.
Right.
But the 2 additions were what in
The teal building is beautiful.
Yeah.
I give you a lot of credit for this design. I give you a lot of credit for this design.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have made an amazing effort. I like the original plan, but I still. You can, but no, that shows you guys have made an extraordinary effort. And then you're saving because you don't have stairwells and you don't have an elevator, that's very costly.
Space as well as cost.
Yeah,
There's a lot of space.
because you're gaining the space on 2 floors where those 3 staircases and the elevator would have gone as functional space.
Yeah.
So it's significantly more efficient in terms of what you're getting. And that was the realization that we all had when we looked at reducing it to 1 floor. So yes, there is certainly a lot more functional space for the square footage.
I just have one cost comment, and my opinion is different than yours, I'm sorry, but it is. I was surprised to see the question on the survey, how much are you willing to spend? My personal feeling is. I need to see the plan, I need to see the renovations, I need to see what you've done for work. And then I'm gonna make a decision. The decision isn't, are we spending $10 million, and then, in my opinion, just. Different side, different. Thank you.
I think you'll see it in my letter. We have to build what we need. This town can afford it.
Well, the other problem, it's not just this project, in the last select board meeting. There's also the rec department has a huge project coming, that's gonna be they're gonna be given a presentation, right, another one on that. So, and that's like, total project cost is like 43 million or something, yeah, it's a big project. So it's not just one project, it's all the projects that are coming down the road as well. So that's why we have to look at what can be affordable for. Not just this project, but the next one after that.
What's that for, Eric? Just to give it a.
Yeah, so that's a long range. So that's,
Well,
as we went in this process, it was looked at for the concept for the library space, community center space. And through that process, we looked at those alternatives of 1 new building for both, 2 new buildings, or where the trustees and select board landed was where we are right now, this renovation, expansion of the library, next one, community center space, community recreation center space, and the growth center. So this project is where it is right now. At the same time, I've been tasked with looking for potential sites in the growth center for that project. The elected officials, the select board at the time, knew we weren't going to stack these right on top of each other. I think our first estimate for the recreation center, people looking at the pool aspect of that was, almost $30 million. So these are long-range projects for the community, and thinking if you have a good site, then you could expand on over time for recreation center. Like at Colchester, they own that piece of land, they built a rec center on, they built it 20 years later. So it's the select board looked at all those elements for 10 years ahead for what other capital projects we have coming up as they made this decision. But it's all future capital planning for the town, but we can't do it all at once.
I do like design, I think design's nice, I really do like it. Just need to know how much it costs, really.
One of the disadvantages with a wooden design is that you can't build on top of it. If we had a steel design, we could build a second story 20 years from now and use it. We can't do that with the wood.
Thanks very much. We'll say we have about 10 more minutes. Last 5 more minutes.
You mentioned that you look at how all the renovation is sourced and mechanical, so we also know story. That's fair. Go. When are you going to restore the mechanical?
We also looking at a mechanical in-house processing. They both have their pros and cons. So we're pricing both of those options out, so you can understand what they are. Then again, once we get the whole number put together, we'll see where it's at. We're gonna have to decide how much we can afford and then go through and.
It sounded like we don't know what we're going to do when we put you mentioned.
Oh, no, sorry.
I should mention too, we have an expectation of having a cost estimate very soon. Within the next couple of days, because that's under. So we will publish that right when we get it. I'll make sure these plans go up on wilsonlibraryproject.org and then there's a link to it. And that the letter that the SDAC wrote, I'll put that up there, and we'll get a cost estimate, we'll put it up there as well.
So just clarification on our point as trustees, so we don't have a cost estimate at this point. So we received these plans to this point, so we will not be moving this on to the select board at this meeting because we don't have all the information to move this on to the select board from this meeting.
I think you can say you tentatively approve of the idea, but you're withholding moving it forward to the select board pending a cost estimate. That would be an option. Should we so choose?
Do we expect to have that by the Tuesday meeting?
By the select board meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah, we expect it in the next day or two.
Okay.
So.
Would someone like to make a motion? Move to approve. The concept, yes, go ahead.
I want to respond to the cost and comment about infilling the courtyard, and that was something that came up very early on. Because it seems like a very logical idea. There are many concerns, including, okay, so now we have a roof over it. If we want to align with the existing roof lines, now that's much larger visual obstruction. There's other options of flat roof with an internal rain, it also has costs associated with getting stormwater outside of the building. But I think it's a valid, if not, I think it is, it's a very valid comment in thinking about the logistics of the site. And that's been a really big driver from the committee and the information we're taking into the design is how do you build on this site in the lowest cost possible that supports the library functions that the staff have identified as important, both for the safety, I mean, that's code is safe for the building, but in terms of the collections goals and the operational goals. So I just want to reiterate that cost and impact on the site is a really important thing that has been thoughts on a lot. And then what's It's just a reminder that there are cars in spaces in Williston, including the town man needing a place for their instruments. They have space. The old church basement was originally designed as a community room. And everybody's forgotten that. I mean, the town spent a lot of money to make that a community space. It hasn't been looked at, it hasn't been used in a lot of years. I've always wondered why part of the library collection couldn't be moved with the right renovations and air control systems and all of that. You know, it could be all in, you know, a reference room or a nonfiction or whatever. But it's a space that's open and available, as is the upstairs of the church, which is absolutely gorgeous and can be used as a meeting space. The disappointment for me was that the library, your committee, never came to the Old Church to ask us. You went to the band, but you didn't come to us to say, is there any part of the library project that it would involve the Old Church? Because you know what? We share the green. We're there together. And so that from the get-go, I was sort of miffed because I'm a trustee of the Old Church. So it's always sort of miffed me that we're forgotten. And I even went during the time of the writing of the town plan recently. I went through every section to see where to put it in there. It's got a pocket card. It's got so many features to it, and nobody appreciates the fact that this gorgeous building is sitting there. And could be used and should be used because it's gonna cost the town a lot to keep up the maintenance of it. And so it you know, it can't just crumble the way it did up in the 1960s. It was a mess. So we should consider that, and it could be considered as part of, I think, the library project. I'd love to see the architects go in and take a look at that bottom space. What could be done with it? And the accessibility issue has already been addressed as we've had architectural firm look at it fully ADA accessible as a historic building. And so that plan is out there. We have it. Just, you know, the second $1 million.
I'm afraid at this point, we're shrinking, not expanding the project. We've taken out the green, we can't add the old brick church in.
Again, I'm putting out there a proposal and, you know, if you don't like it, all right, but I just want to remind you, in every meeting where I have a chance to remind people about the old brick church, I'm going to do it. Because I don't want to see it crumble again. I think it was a very important renovation that the town put a lot of time into, you know, 50 years ago, but it shouldn't happen again. I think it came up in another discussion that we should be taking care of the things we already have, like all the bike paths and all the, you know, all the things the town already has. We need to maintain them and not just keep expanding.
Thank you, thank you. And I think that speaks to the
Sure.
renovation aspect.
Can I just make, I would like to make a motion to move.
Yes.
So we move me forward. I would like to move that we recommend these plans for discussion to the select board. I'm not comfortable moving them without a number as a full recommendation, but that we move it as a discussion so we can move this along. It will stay as a public meeting after the select board meeting. We've done this work, let's forward it through and continue that conversation.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 And,
Thanks, Diane.
okay, we have a motion to move forward. Recommend we move this as a discussion to the select.
And then meet again on Tuesday with the select board.
You know, the discretion of the select board, we moved it to the select board, so.
It'll be a discussion item for the select board. It's coming meeting this Tuesday, the 7th.
Yeah, and the trustees will be there then too.
And so. Put that in the notes with the trustees, so we can make the goal to the select board meeting. Is there any other business to Okay, so then we are going to adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time and your comments. We appreciate your feedback and input. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone online.
Yeah.
Anybody wants a copy of the plan, so I have.
So I was. Yeah, I know it's right. Oh.